To John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if I look a little bit tired today, it's because I was up celebrating the Trump rally, President Donald Trump announcing that he is in fact running for re-election in 2020. I was there last night in Orlando. If you haven't seen it, I did some live streaming for there. I posted some of it on my John Martin Talks Facebook page, but the bulk of it, the live streaming itself, was done on Citizens for Trump. If you're not familiar with that page, it's 3 separate words, Citizens for Trump. Check it out. I broadcast on there daily, Monday through Friday. But the people behind Citizens for Trump asked me to go down and be kind of the man on the street, both outside the arena before the event, inside and after. And that's exactly what I did. Now, I was part of a team effort. There were quite a few people down there doing similar things, but it really was interesting as I've seen some of the other videos that some of the team members from Citizens for Trump shot, and we all had different perspectives and were in different parts of it. So I don't want to speak for them, but I think I can in this sense. It was exciting. It was a privilege to be there, and there are a lot of people excited for Donald Trump. So if you want to see those videos that were shot, or their videos now, they were live streamed yesterday, go to Citizens for Trump. You can also go to my site, John Martin Talks, Facebook. If you haven't done so already, please go there, like it, and share it with others. But I want to start the show out today giving you just a few thoughts, and these are just my thoughts on what happened in Orlando, Florida last night at Amway Arena, where President Trump formally kicked off his 2020 re-election bid. So this is not coming to you from any particular article, it's just my thoughts on it in general. Well, first of all, in one word I could sum it up, it was fantastic. It was awesome. It was fantastically awesome, I suppose. The president literally knocked it out of the park. I mean, I don't care if you like President Trump or not. If you give an honest assessment of it, it was one of his better speeches, one of his more passionate speeches. It was a great combination between the passion that he brings to it, sometimes the humor, the seriousness. But in this case, he brought forward some news-making things, some new policies, some goals, some ambitions. He kind of rehashed it, and I say that with affection, the past, talking about literally promises made, promises kept. But you sum it all up, and President Trump knocked it out of the park. And before I go any further, let me also say that as far as the crowd, and you can really see this from the live streaming we did yesterday, it was, to quote the president, it was huge. There were people literally camping out in Florida in the hot sun, in the downpours, in the humidity. Man, it can be brutal in a place like Orlando, which is really not that close to the coast. It's kind of in the center of the state down there. It can, if you haven't experienced it, it can be pretty brutal. But people hung in there. The arena was packed. Now, there were some seats empty in case CNN happened to pan them, but they didn't show much of the event, as I understand that. Obviously, I didn't watch their coverage. But the place holds approximately about 25,000, I think. And there, of course, were a ton of people on the floor. If I had to guesstimate the crowd, given some of the cordoned off seats versus what was on the floor, I would say there was an easy 20,000 people there. I didn't really get a good gauge of how many actually watched the event outside, because I was inside, obviously, when it started. Excuse me. And by the time I got outside, any people who were out there dispersed. But I heard there was quite a few people. So I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't at least 5,000 people outside that wanted to get in. Of course, they had responses of close to 100,000 from what I hear, people talking about tickets. But that is pretty typical. People will request tickets, won't actually come to the event. But that's a good thing. Not good that they don't come, but the fact that 100,000 people responded, the Trump campaign, and we'll probably talk more about that in an article that I'm going to cover in just a few moments, but the Trump campaign uses all that data to expand their reach to voters. So it's a win-win, as they say, winning, 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 Mr. Trump would say. Well, let me talk about the event itself. Vice President Pence. Now, a lot of people may or may not know this, but it's pretty rare for the president and the vice president to be at the same spot at the same time outside of the confines of like the White House or like the State of the Union address on Capitol Hill, those types of things. The president and vice president aren't together very often. There's several reasons for that. The number one reason is safety and security, and trying to make sure that if something happened to the president, that it wouldn't affect the vice president. That's just a standard practice. And the other thing is the logistics of it, having their staffs together, their Secret Service contingents together, and also they're working different venues, so to speak. So to have Vice President Pence and his family, his wife was with him, at the event was fantastic. It was incredible. He gave a tremendous speech. We don't really get to hear Vice President speak that much, and Pence is no exception to that. But Vice President Pence, man, he's got to be one of the best choices for vice president any president has ever made. I mean, the guy is just stellar at every level and may one day be president himself. And I would have no issue with that whatsoever. But so he gave a terrific speech. The highlight of the event for me, because, you know, obviously President Trump being there and seeing the president, this is like my fourth rally. And oh, by the way, I still haven't got paid, Rosie O'Donnell. No one has paid me. I hadn't got any checks from Vladimir Putin. So, if people are getting paid like Rosie O'Donnell said, I'm still kind of pissed off about that because I ain't got no check. I still hadn't got one. So I was happy to be there. No, I joke about that. But one of the highlights, if not the highlight for me, was Sarah Huckabee Sanders. The president called her out, and she came up and spoke on stage. It was a very emotional experience. I could hardly even hear what she was saying because the crowd was so excited. But just to see Sarah up there in that arena, in that atmosphere, at that moment, really did my heart well, because I've said before, and I'll say it again, because if I say it, it bears repeating. I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders is quite simply the boss. I think she has done a yeoman's job in a difficult situation. A press secretary is a difficult position, one of the more difficult positions in any administration. But when you take on the piling on of the media and people literally hollering at her that she can't even go into a restaurant and those kind of things, to keep her composure and all of that and to be strong and forceful, man, she has really done a great job in a very difficult job. But she's leaving that job, and there's rumors that she is considering a run for governor of Arkansas in 2022, and that may be one of the reasons why she's leaving. She did not address that, obviously, last night, but if that's the case, man, Sarah, you got my support 100%, because I really would like to see her one day in the White House again, but on the other side, as president herself. I think she would actually be a good president. I mean, I'm just very impressed with her. But the greatest thing for me of everything in that, of the rally itself, is just meeting the people, the various people that support the president, the patriotic Americans, literally the backbone of this nation. And the polling is talking about, we're going to talk specifically about the polling in just a moment, but the polling is talking about Florida, for instance, swinging to Joe Biden or whoever the Democratic nominee is and all that. Don't count those chickens before they hatch. Let me just tell you that, because I can tell you there were a lot of Floridians at that rally. There were literally people from all over the world. If you check out my videos, I interviewed people from London, from the Philippines. I interviewed people of every background, people who aren't supposed to be for the president. Guess what? They were women and other people than old white dudes like me, young people. I've interviewed 2 or 3 different people that were literally prepared to cast their first vote ever, period, because they're 18, just turning 18, or will be by the time the election arrives. They are going to vote for the first time ever for Donald J. Trump. I started to say Ron because I voted for Ronald Reagan the first time I ever voted. That kind of tells you. And I was a Democrat back then, and I voted for Ronald Reagan first president I ever had the opportunity to vote for, or presidential contender, and I voted for him. But I interviewed young people. I interviewed, dare I say it, people of color, black folks, Hispanic folks, old folks, young folks, rich folks, maybe some broke folks, and all of them for Trump. I interviewed one fella that was had a shirt on that said Chinese Americans for Trump, and I could tell by his accent that he probably spoke Chinese. So I asked him to actually say something to people in his native tongue, so to speak, and he did. And I couldn't tell what he said, but it was definitely pro-Trump. I could tell that. So meeting the people, man, it's just fantastic. So if I had the privilege of meeting you out there, I greatly appreciate that. I actually, after the event was over, I met Alveda King, the daughter of Martin Luther King. Now, I did not interview her really out of courtesy because I could tell she was pretty tired. I talked to her for a few minutes, introduced myself, told her what I was doing and how much I appreciated her patriotism and the sacrifices that she and her family have made for the greater good of America and all that. And I did ask her, I said, would you be willing to talk? And she said she would, but she would appreciate it maybe if she didn't because she was really tired. And I respected that a great deal. So I wish I could bring you the interview. You just have to take my old word for it, the old Salty Dog's word for it, which is you can bank on that. I happened to meet her, but I did a great series of interviews with people. I interviewed, for instance, the national committee man for the state of Florida for the Republican Party, the National Party. Check that out as well because it was a great interview and Peter is just a terrific man. To sum it all up, it was a great event. I'm privileged I was there. Thank you so much, Citizens for Trump, for being there. Thank you so much for the kind words people have, because I've gotten about 50,000 views combined on the various things, maybe even more. I hadn't checked in a while. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in every day on places like Citizens for Trump, Deplorable Resistance, John Martin Talks, Media Measures. I mean, there's so many. If you'd like to be a part of our broadcast, by the way, and you have a Facebook site, just message me and we'll see if we can't make that happen. Okay, we're going to move on now. This is an article from the AFP, and it's pretty interesting. I don't agree with all of it, but the gentleman makes some pretty good points. And the title of it is 4 Key Points on Divisive Trump's Path to Re-Election. So he calls the president divisive right off the bat in this paragraph, next paragraph as well. But I think he makes some interesting points about the 2020 election and what the president's going to have to do in order to win. Because make no mistake about this, let me just say this before I go any further. President Trump, he's got a difficult path to win. Now, a lot of people, I think he's going to win. Let me just say that flat out. But I don't think we should take it for granted, and I don't think people are. I think the people I talked with yesterday are determined. They're passionate about the president. The biggest thing I can see different, and I talked about this with Peter Feynman, the National Committee man. You see that in the interview that I did. The difference between now and when Trump ran for election, it was pretty much all about the passion for Trump and the passion to restore America and all of that. It was mostly about passion. Now, I still sense that passion. That passion has gone nowhere. If anywhere, it's accelerated. But right now, I sense more of just outright determination to get her done. Let's get this thing done. Let's reelect the president. And I actually think that's a very encouraging and positive sign. All right, we're going to cover this article. Washington, AFP. Donald Trump is a deeply divisive figure and his current 2020 election poll numbers are horrible, but things can still go his way and save the Republican from being a one-term president. So the first thing is divisive figure. And these are my words. Why? Why is Donald Trump considered a divisive figure? And certainly he is in certain areas. I'm not saying he is divisive. He is considered or portrayed, is a better word, divisive. I think if you actually get past the rhetoric and the mainstream media coverage and all the ridiculous BS, as the president said, coming out of the Democrats, if you have the courage to actually listen to the president, what he's actually saying, look at what he's actually done, what he is proposing to do, and the results of all of that, I don't see how you can really say the president's divisive. You might say you don't like him. I think that's actually affects his poll numbers, by the way. I think there are people out there. There's a couple of reasons why he doesn't poll well. I think there, and the two I really stand out to me, I think there are people who are beat down, who are kind of afraid to, for instance, there are people who are camera shy. You'll see it in some of the video that didn't want to be interviewed, which is fine. I respect that, and I turned away. I couldn't really edit it at the time, but I respect that. But there are people who just for various reasons don't want to show their face, so to speak. And you can't, in a way, blame them because people have literally been beaten up and threatened for simply wearing a MAGA hat, let alone actually coming out and supporting the president. So I think there's that element. I also think there is an element, and some Trump supporters may not like to hear this, but I think there is an element of people out there that quite simply just don't like Donald Trump. They think he's boorish. They think he's over the top, vulgar, a bunch of different things. And some of it you can make a case for, certainly. I think that that's one of the reasons why we voted for him, but, you know, some of us are sicker than others. But I think there are people who genuinely don't like President Trump, the man himself. But I think a lot of those people actually like the presidency of Donald Trump as far as the results and where we're getting. They're supportive of the MAGA agenda, the America First agenda. So they're not going to poll well when it comes to the president, but they're still going to vote. Those two different categories of people who are a little bit scared to say what they are and people who just simply don't like the president but like the results, those two groups are still going to vote for Donald Trump come 2020. So I don't know about this divisive. Certainly he is portrayed that way, but that is intentional, and most, if not all, of his base certainly understands that. Now, poll numbers. I mean, we could talk around the clock and in circles about poll numbers. I mean, the most obvious thing is that the polls were all wrong, right? In the 2016. I mean, we make jokes, but it's just a fact, okay? Polling has changed in general. So it's more difficult to poll, and you can manipulate polls. I think a lot of these polls are simply, and I hate to be conspiratorial, but I'm going to be, I think simply to beat down the president, to keep people from supporting him, to keep people financially and everything else, and to dishearten people from like knocking on doors and making phone calls and the things that really win elections, sending an email to your circle of friends, that type of thing. I can tell you that ain't working. That ain't working because the people who are the door knockers, who are the phone callers, who are the emailers, who are talking to people on the street, they are more energized and determined now, from what I see, than they were even in 2016, and they were over the top, and we know the results of that. So I'm not too worried about the polls. But he says, this writer goes on to say, here are 4 factors that will decide whether Trump pulls off another famous victory. First statement is never mind the popular vote. So in other words, it's all about the Electoral College. And he's right about that. But this is interesting the way he describes it. He says, a quirk of the U.S. system is that you don't always have to have the most votes across the country to win the presidency. You need the most electoral college votes, obviously, which are handed out by individual states depending on their population size. So the big thing I have is quirk. And I looked up the definition of that. It says a peculiar behavior or habit. It's not a quirk in the system. It is the system. Snowflakes, get over it. Donald Trump is not only still your president, but he is the legitimate president of the United States because he won in the system that we have. Now, we could go we could do show after show about the Electoral College. I'm going to pass on that for now. We've done some in the past. Go to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others, see all of our videos there. You'll see that we have done those shows. You can also go back to archive on my YouTube channel, which we're going to revive as well. But it's still up there for previous podcasts. John Martin Talks on YouTube. You got to spell it all the way out. Check it out. But it's not a quirk. It's our system. It's the system our forefathers gave us. Thank God they did. And President Trump, quite frankly, ran a better campaign than Hillary Clinton, was a better candidate for the actual winning results. Does it really matter if you, what if Hillary Clinton had gotten every single vote in California and New York? Guess what? She still wouldn't be president. Get over it, Snowflakes. Move on. Back to the article. Usually the popular and the Electoral College results match. That's true, but there's a big but in that. Most recently, the only Clinton, that is Bill Clinton, the only Clinton that ever actually served as president in the White House, didn't win the popular vote either. And I don't remember Hillary and her clan jumping up and saying, boy, Bill won, but we got to do away with this electoral college thing right now. Yeah, check it out, Snowflakes. There's a history before Barack Obama. President Bill Clinton did not win the popular vote. Did not. And still won. Now, some of that was due to Ross Perot, but hey, it's still a fact. It's not my opinionated fact. It's just fact. But my opinions are pretty factual to start with. Once more, back to the article. Once more, attention will turn to the swing states rich in those electoral college votes. And he lists a few here. Wisconsin, Florida, Iowa, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania stand out because Trump managed to flip them from the Democrats in 2016. That's absolutely true. But here's something that you're not seeing reported anywhere. You know that they show, Biden's leading by 10 in Florida, whatever the number is, and nationally and all that and everything else. And even box checker Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, I guess, but even he's beating Trump in some place, that kind of thing. But keep in mind, Lee, this is something they're not showing. First of all, we know the accuracy of the polls in question. But in places like Pennsylvania and Michigan, Donald Trump, according to the polls, is trailing like Joe Biden, but he's trailing within the margin of error. Considering how inaccurate the polls are and how much of a beatdown the president has gotten from the press, the fact that he is even if the polls are bogus, the fact that he's even in the margin of error should give a little pause to some of those, quote, Democratic strategists. But you won't hear CNN report on that. The next contingent or point he makes in the article is base to the rescue. Latest numbers are 53% disapproval to 42.5% approval. That's the current numbers according to this article from a couple of different polls on presidential approval. 50% disapprove, 42.5% approve. By contrast, they say, Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama, at the same point in his presidency had 47.5% approval. And I'm not going to get into disputing these figures one way or another, but let me just tell you this. Let's look at Obama's ratings. This article is claiming that he had 47.5% approval rating at the same time during his presidency. I'm not going to debate that. Probably true. But if true, think about this. What about the difference in something as simple as the press coverage of President Obama during that period of time and the press coverage of President Trump during this period of time? There is no comparison other than they're complete opposite. President Obama, even though he actually ridiculed the press, restricted the press, they don't want to talk about that, he actually was given probably the most favorable press coverage I have ever seen. I can't remember a president, a candidate, a president, a two-term president getting the type of just drooling love fest. I mean, what did the guy on MSNBC say? I can see him right now. I'm trying to think of his name anyway. It don't really matter. Talking about his leg was tingling when the president was up there talking about Obama. Leg was tingling. He's probably got something tingling when Trump's up there talking, but it's probably something a little bit different. Matthews is his name. Matthews on CNBC, MSNBC. See, I watch some of these shows as a public service to you, so you don't have to. But the press coverage alone could dictate the difference in those points. Can you imagine if President Trump actually got the support for, or at least the fairness, even a level of fairness of the media, even half what Obama got, where he'd be? Probably over 50%. That said, according to this article, he currently, talking about the president, enjoys a blistering 87% approval rating from Republicans, according to Gallup, and this number has always hovered close to 90%. And that is very true. There may be a number of swamp rat Republicans, never Trumpers, that aren't supporting the president, but the rank and file, the people, and I know this is going to make some of my friends who are more established Republicans, and you know who you are, a little bit upset, but you might as well get over it. This right now, the Republican Party is Trump's party right now. He is for them and they are for him. I'm talking about the rank and file. And I'll talk about this more in a minute. But the National Republican Party, contrary to what you may hear, I can tell you, because I know quite a few people at that level, are 100% behind the president. And we're going to address that more in just a minute. But he goes on to say in this article, that's a big base, talking about the Republicans. If he can get them all out to vote, then adds a slice of the undecideds as well. So let me just tell you, they're going to come out and vote. The people that voted for Donald Trump in 2016, now I'm not saying that alone would be enough for him to win. He needs to expand. But if you're worried about those people that voted, don't. Because, of course, there's always exceptions, individual. But as a collective whole, I can tell you, I have no doubt about this. The people that voted for DJT, take this from JMT, in 2016 are not only going to vote for President Trump, but they're waiting in line and anxious to do it. They always going to do it with a vengeance. I can tell you right now, one of the things, it's probably an unforeseen or certainly an unintended consequence, the attack on President Trump, which is an attack on us. It goes back to like Hillary Clinton and the deplorables, and the president talked about that last night a little bit. I can tell you, as people who have supported Donald Trump, especially those people who were like out front supporting Trump, like myself, we're ready to vote for him with a vengeance. We're ready to work twice as hard as we did in 2016 for the president. So be careful. And as far as turnout, it's the Democrats. Now, I'm not saying that the Republican Party, the Trump organization, doesn't need to focus on turnout. They need to, and I have every confidence that they will, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But the Democrats are the ones that better be concerned about turnout, because they're all looking at 2018, and there was no big real surprises in 2018. I hate to tell you that, and we've talked about that. Check out my podcast on that. But the Democrats, they're ripping each other apart right now, or getting ready to for sure. And really, there are groups of Democrats, like, do you really believe that people who are diehard Bernie fans are going to want to turn around and vote for Joe Biden, for instance? They may just stay at home or vote for somebody else, a third party or whatever. I think the Democrats better worry more about turnout than the Republicans, especially the base of Donald Trump. Because none of these other people, do they even have a base other than like maybe Bernie Sanders? Does anyone else in the 2020 field have a base? Does Joe Biden really have a base? I know he's polling reasonably high, but who is Joe Biden's base? Just think about that. The next thing he talks about here is, quote, the election machine. In 2016, Trump ran a by-the-seat-of-the-pants campaign benefiting someone who never once held office. And that's true. Donald Trump ran a very atypical campaign. I guess I hope I'm using the right word, you know, old salty dog here. But Donald Trump did not run a traditional campaign in any stretch. And some of it worked well for him. And quite frankly, there were some things that did not work. But I can tell you right now, the Trump campaign that I'm seeing shape up compared to last time is going to combine the best of both worlds. It's going to have that grassroots, passionate people. They are ready, man. They are really ready. So be encouraged. But it's also going to be more sophisticated, more data-driven than ever before. Just to give you one little quick example. You know, the mainstream media has chastised, of course, they sometimes mention it in this article, they do cover it, but they've chastised, Trump said there's 100,000 people that have asked for tickets, and have bemoaned that. Of course, there wasn't 100,000 people there yesterday, but the Trump organization is actually mining that data. And I can tell you, you know this if you've ever applied, at least this cycle around, for a ticket to the Trump rally, you get bombarded with emails, text messages that you are in the database now. And so be prepared for the onslaught. Some of it be good, some of it not. But this time the campaign, this is what they're saying about President Trump's campaign, brims with tested leaders and $40 million war chest and a sophisticated social media strategy. And this is where I was going to tell you, it's more than even that. This article doesn't even scratch the surface on that. Not only does President Trump personally have $40 million in his chest and growing, but he has helped raise the Republican Party nationally in the hundreds of millions of dollars over the last couple of years, all of which pretty much has been dedicated to data, to working data, working social media. So expect a campaign this time around like you've never seen. You know, one of the strong points for Barack Obama in his campaign is that they were able to outpace the Republicans on technology. That's not happening this time. I don't know that the Democrats will be on par, but they certainly won't be ahead of where the Republicans are. And you're just going to be amazed when they roll this baby out, which is coming soon. I've seen, because of my position as state committee man, I have seen some of the aspects of it. I'm not really going to reveal it now, but it is impressive, to say the least. There's also the matter of foot soldiers. He's talking about you guys. The volunteers who knock on doors and spread enthusiasm. Trump has his army ready to go after collecting data on tens of thousands of people attending his Make America Great Again rallies. Kind of what I just said. And you can absolutely bank on that. The last thing he puts in here is for the success of the president in re-election. It depends on his opponent. I don't totally agree with that, but we're going to look into it in a minute as we go forward. Trump faces the uncertainty of not knowing for months to come who his opponent will be. An unwieldy 23 candidates, they're coming to Florida, by the way, watch out, South Florida, are lining up to become the Democratic nominee. This uncertainty, I'm not so sure of that. I mean, obviously, if you could focus on one person, it might be better. It might also grow tired and stale. But I don't think that uncertainty is that big a deal, because I think really what the president has already been doing is painting them that, hey, it really doesn't matter who comes out of the 2020 field, because there's a couple of things we know for sure. One is they are definitely going to be a stark contrast to me, talking about President Trump. And two, it doesn't matter who comes out of it. They're going to be the most socialist, hardcore leftist candidate any party, a major party, has ever put forward for president. That is without a doubt. And so you're going to have the MAGA agenda, President Trump, promises made, promises kept, all these things against the furthest left, most socialist, progressive candidate. Regardless of the only difference between the 23 in the field is who's the furthest to the left. There is no question that they all are progressive left. Now, people like Biden are trying to run from that a little bit, but he can't. His record, what little he has, is hardcore leftist, and it will be revealed for sure. But it says here, let me use it means that Trump cannot tailor his message. That's what this writer is saying. He can't tailor his message. Well, I just tailored it for you. Basically, it's MAGA against socialism. It's jobs against the Green New Deal. So I think that President Trump is already doing and will continue to do a great job and expand upon it. And I think you'll see more and more focused as the calendar moves forward. But he can contrast himself with the whole Democratic leftist party in general, period. And let alone his actual accomplishments. And the article goes on to say, if he gets, talking about the president, if he gets the current frontrunner Joe Biden, a former vice president, he'll likely argue that even as the incumbent, he is the disruptive candidate, while Biden would mean going back to the past. In other words, sorry about that, I'm a little bit hot out here in Florida. But while Biden means going back to the past. So in other words, that Biden represents the status quo and is like one of the kings of the swamp rat. I love how Biden campaigns on how screwed up this country is when he's been in a position of power literally for 60 years to do something about it. What has he done? I mean, his whole campaign is like, I apologize for the things I've done, and the country's screwed up because of the things we couldn't do. So I don't know. Plus, Biden is running a Hillary campaign right now. Biden is running the same way Hillary ran in the 2016 national campaign against Trump. Biden is running that same style of campaign, it appears to me, against the field for the 2020 Democratic challenger. And I don't know how it's going to work. I mean, it's working right now, but nobody's voted yet either. Go back to the article. It says, if he gets the increasingly popular Senator Elizabeth Warren, talking about President Elizabeth Warren, President running against Elizabeth Warren, Trump will probably focus on his claim that the Democrats are hard left socialists. His claim? It's not a claim, it's a fact. Hoping to scare enough of those middle of the road voters over into his camp. So it's interesting. The media is now starting to push Elizabeth Warren again. I don't know if you've noticed that, but in the last couple of weeks, I've picked up on it. Elizabeth Warren is the one that they're actually starting to push right now. Not exactly sure why, but I'll keep you posted on that. The article goes on to say, on the other side of the coin, the waiting game gives Trump a massive advantage. While the Democrats fight each other, he can campaign and keep building money and volunteers. And guess what else he can do? Lean on this one, Snowflakes. President Trump, guess what else he can do? He can be president for the next couple of years. Well, none of them can, right? So he is still your president. Get over it. It's a fact. All right, we're going to move on to what I would label more ridiculous BS. And this comes to you from NPR. Congressional hearing on slavery reparations set for Wednesday, today in the Capitol. For the first time in a decade, Congress will hold a hearing Wednesday on the subject of reparations for the descendants of slaves in the United States, a topic that has gained traction in the run-up to the 2020 elections. Now, let me just tell you, there is no way in the world, sorry about that, this can work. It's not possible for this to work. It ain't going to work. It's all political theater. Let me give you a very simple, I think, example of why this won't work, and it involves two Democrat 2020 frontrunners, maybe, or certainly they're in the field. Elizabeth Warren, I call it, versus Cory Booker. So, let's say Cory Booker can say, okay, now forget the fact that he has lived a privileged life. But Cory Booker is going to say, you know, as the descendants of slaves, I am due reparations. So Elizabeth Warren, who is obviously the whitest person on the planet by her own paid for DNA research, she's Liawapa, as I call her, but her DNA doesn't lie, and it said she's the whitest woman that just about ever existed. So she may say, well, Cory, old Senator Booker, fellow senator, yeah, let me get my checkbook out and write you a check. So she writes him a check, and he says, thank you, ma'am, I appreciate that. I feel better already. My descendants, everything, we feel better. Well, hold on just a minute. Now can't Liawapa, Pocahontas as the president called her, Elizabeth Warren, who says that she's 1/200,000th Cherokee or whatever, can't she turn around and then ask Cory Booker for reparations? And you say, well, why would she get reparations? Well, have you ever heard a little thing called the Buffalo Soldiers? The Buffalo Soldiers were a group of former slaves that were, after the Civil War, were members of the Union Army, and they turned around and joined the cavalry, and a special brigade of them, I don't know if the terminology is correct, were sent out west, and they became some of the most efficient Indian fighters in our military. And so you had a group of all black soldiers that their main objective was to kill Native Americans, right? Just not enslave them, just flat kill them, men, women, and children. And they were very efficient at that. So can't Elizabeth Pocahontas Liawapa Warren turn around and say, well, you got to give me, because your ancestors were slaves, but not all of them were killed in slavery. My folks, my people, died under the hoofs and the guns of your people, so don't you have to write me back even a bigger check? And I say all that to say it's just crazy. This whole thing of reparations is impossible for it to work. How much, for instance, would Barack Obama get? Well, first of all, he's half black, half white, right? But the black half of him never was a slave because direct from Africa. And the white half of him was from Kansas, his mother, right? So even if you say everybody of color gets some, what would like Obama get half a check? And would he have to write it to himself? I mean, it's crazy, man. It's all political theater. But not to be stopped, the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the Constitution, Subcommittee on the House on the Constitution, like any of them even care about if they're studying the Constitution, it's how to evade it, or get around, avoid it, or whatever. Civil Rights and Civil Liberties is holding a hearing on H.R. 40, which calls for a commission to study and develop reparational proposals for African Americans, including a formal apology by the U.S. government for I can't even say that word, perpetration, I guess, of gross human rights violations and crimes against humanity on African slaves and their descendants. There's no question that slavery is is a terrible stain on this country. So I'm not going to dispute that. But that all sounds good, doesn't it? Oh, let's just do it. But it's political theater. It's absolutely, it'll never work. Because going back to the president's example, what percentage of black blood or former slave blood, however you want to label it, do you have to get any of these reparations? Keep in mind that the Cherokee Nation came out and said, we wish Elizabeth Warren would just drop this thing, because so many, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, they basically say white folks all the time are trying to claim that they're part Indian because they want to get a casino check. They want to get some kind of handout from the government. So do you really believe that if there were reparations for black or people of color who had any percentage of black ancestry, which is going to be a ton of people, by the way, how many of them would go, hey man, they'd be the whitest person. I got DNA tests right here that shows that I might be 1/25th, whatever. Yeah, it is just absolute insane. The hearing is scheduled to feature testimony from author Tia-Nisha Coates. I don't know anything about this person. I did look them up, so you can check it out. Whose article, The Case for Reparations, have not read it, published by Atlantic Magazine in 2014, is widely credited with reigniting debate over restorative justice for the descendants of slaves. But why stop there? Why stop with the descendants of slaves? Why not, as I say, the descendants of people who were gunned down and trampled over by the Buffalo Soldiers? I mean, why stop with just people? There's all kind of atrocities. Man's inhumanity to man knows no bounds, literally. Also scheduled to appear are actor Danny Glover, Senator Cory Booker, as well as legal experts, economists, and civil rights leaders. Now, they're talking about Danny Glover and Cory Booker. Now, these two guys can certainly represent how our history has kept them down, right? I mean, Danny Glover is one of the most successful actors, probably one of the highest paid people. Let me tell you how many hundreds of millions he's probably made from acting. So really, him being descendants of former slaves has really kept him down. And Cory Booker, man, by God, this guy is so far removed from slavery. I mean, his parents, and I'm not diminishing, let me just back up. I am not diminishing what people who were slaves went through, and even their most immediate kin. But we are a long way from that now. Do we need to continue to grow away from that? No doubt. But this idea of reparations is just not possible. It's not. But Cory Booker, man, I mean, his parents were like IBM executives. This guy went to Oxford, went to one of the Ivy League schools, I think Princeton, and went to Stanford in California. I mean, give me a break, Senator. How much more privileged can a person be than you, sir? I don't think you'll ever be president, but privileged? Absolutely. So this is just insane, man. But H.R. 40 is sponsored by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. Now, she's named after two old white dudes. I bet that's torturous, right, dude? You have to argue about Jackson Lee. The commission has the support of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Duh. It's probably the support of all the crazy Democrats. I'm sure AOC, the real speaker, is for it, no doubt. Aside from Booker, and several other Democratic presidential aspirants have expressed support for some of former reparations, including Beto O'Rourke. I mean, the Hispanic guy, I call him Paco, but he's actually Robert Francis. He and Elizabeth Warren got to be two of the whitest people that ever lived. Kamala Harris, I mean, her black ancestry doesn't even come from the United States of America. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but Kamala Harris, would she be due a check? I doubt it. And the one, her father, who is Jamaican, said that he's ashamed of her. So, I don't know, man. And former Elizabeth Warren, we talked about her, Secretary of Housing and Urban Affairs, Julian Castro. I mean, all these people are just obvious victims of oppression. And look, the bottom line is, this will just die in the Senate. It's going to die in the Senate. Everybody knows it. It's political theater. Mitch McConnell on Tuesday said he does not support reparations. I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, for whom none is currently living, are responsible. He goes on to talk about the price that was paid, the Civil War, and he mentions that we elected a black president. You know, I'm not sure what that actually means. I think it does mean that we're not all that prejudiced anymore. But let me just ask you this. We'll close on the article on this. What gives people in a free society, if you're not in a free society, it really doesn't matter what your position is. But what gives people in a free society more freedom and more power than anything else? What is the difference maker? It's not color of skin. It's color. It's color green, man. It's money in your pocket, like Danny Glover and Cory Booker have. That's what separates people in a free society. Their ability to make money. That's good, bad, or whatever. It's not the worship of, it's not that money is the root of all evil. It's the worship of money, by the way. Just a little preaching on the side. Not going to pass a collection plate, maybe later. But let me just ask you this. Who has done more? If you agree any with my previous statement about freedom and money helping that, give you more power, who's done more for people of color, specifically in this case, I guess African Americans, than Donald J. Trump? I mean, he has put more money in the pocket of black Americans than any reparations ever will be. I mean, how can you can want a check from the government? Let me just ask you this. People who get checks from the government, are they more or less free than entrepreneurs who are making their own money? There's no doubt about it. So if you're actually for reparations, then you need to get behind Donald J. Trump, because, man, black home ownership, which is the core value of freedom, the ability to own private property, is at the highest level we've ever seen it. Black unemployment is at the lowest level we've ever seen it. Black business ownership, which is really the key to freedom and power, is up over 400% since Donald Trump became president. So don't go down the path of reparations. It's a dead-end hole that will lead you to nothing but anger, misery, and poverty. If you want true freedom and the ability to use it, then you need to go the route of Donald J. Trump. You can take that from JMT. All right, we got one last article here we want to read you. It's kind of short, but it shows you while the president was in Orlando last night, focusing on not only the MAGA, Make America Great Again, but Keep America Great, and talking about all that he wants to continue to do for this great country and for the American citizens, and how to protect them and enable them to become free, the pursuit of happiness. This is what the Democrats are up to. This is from old Politico. It's about Shifty Schiff, I call him, Chairman Adam Schiff. Now, some people call him Shifty Schiff. The president called him Pencil Neck. I still say the dude looks like one of them gay vampires from True Blood, but I'm just saying. House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff said the clock is ticking for Robert Mueller to publicly testify about his investigation into Russian meddling during the 2016 presidential election. So let me just, what are they going to ask Mueller? If Mueller comes up, he's already said he's not going to say anything more than what the report says. So what are they going to have Mueller do? Get up there and actually read the report out loud? I mean, because that's what he said. Time is running out, Schiff said Tuesday on CNN's New Day. No surprise there. With someone like Bob Mueller, I didn't know you guys were that chummy. Bob Mueller making an appeal to his patriotism and sense of duty is the right way to go. Well, let me just maybe hypothesize something different, Mr. Schiff. Could it be that his sense of patriotism and sense of duty is the very reason why he doesn't want to testify? Because it's over, he did his job, the report came out, you just don't want to accept it? Maybe Bob Mueller doesn't want to be a part of the show trials you're trying to have. If he is the guy that you've all claimed to be with integrity, why would he want to be a part of that? So if he's truly a patriot, like if you were Mr. Schiff, you would just close these hearings and get on with the business of governing America. I mean, but it's not about that. It's all about political theater, like the reparations. The California Democrat added that August is too late for such public appearance, and that if an agreement isn't reached, we will have to use a subpoena. And I got a radical idea for you, Mr. Schiff, and Jerry Nadler, who's also trying to subpoena, talking about subpoenaing Robert Mueller. Why not just accept the report that we paid for? We paid millions, tens of millions of dollars, thousands of hours, thousands of subpoenas, thousands of people, testified, that kind. Why not just accept the report for what it is, the good, the bad, the ugly of it, and move on? Because it's not about that. It's not about finding the truth. It's the fantasy world you live in, and it's becoming more and more clear every day. If you just listen to these progressives, I've been telling you, all you got to do is listen to them. This is not about America. It's about Donald J. Trump, and they can't accept the 2016 elections, and they're scared to death that he's going to win again in 2020. They're terrified of that. So the only reason they want to have these investigations and possibly impeach 45 is to remove him from office, which they probably don't have time to do, so they realize that, but stop him from winning in 2020. It has nothing to do with the truth, because the truth will re-elect Donald Trump. I hope you've enjoyed the show today as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Check out our videos from last night's Trump rally. I think you'll enjoy them very much. You can see them on Citizens for Trump. You can also see most of them posted directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page. Thank you for tuning in. Please like it, share it, and spread it with others. But above all else, like I say every day, from my family to yours, from my heart to yours, have a blessed day.